All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Decoding the hidden language, specifically how AI detects online tropes. You know those classic storytelling devices we're so used to seeing in movies? Well, they're actually being weaponized right now on social media, and researchers are finally fighting back using AI. Today, we're unpacking a genuinely groundbreaking study from the ACL anthology about automated detection of tropes in short texts. This research exposes a totally hidden layer of the internet. It reveals the invisible narrative structures that shape public discourse, honestly, often without us even realizing it's happening. We're going to look at exactly what these structures are, how they work, and how a team of academic detectives essentially built machine learning tools to spot them out in the wild.
To enter the City of Gold, one must have 200 keys. Now that sounds like a dramatic line straight out of an adventure movie script, right? It sets up this classic, epic, cinematic quest. Well, the internet uses similar hidden narrative keys to unlock our emotions. Think about your favorite film. Whether it's a treasure hunter looking for El Dorado or your classic damsel in distress, movies rely on familiar setups so you instantly understand the stakes. You immediately know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, and what the ultimate goal is, all from a few simple cues. Social media does the exact same thing, but in a much more compressed and, frankly, sometimes manipulative way.
And that brings us to what a trope actually is. It's basically a storytelling device or convention. It's a shortcut for describing situations the storyteller can reasonably assume the audience will recognize. It relies entirely on familiarity. It takes a massive, complex situation and just boils it down into a highly recognizable narrative shortcut. Now, in media studies, a trope isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? It's really just a tool. It's a way for a storyteller to communicate a massive amount of cultural and emotional information, like instantly. But the big question is, what happens when this cinematic tool is taken out of the movie theater and dropped right into the chaotic, fast-paced world of online debates?
Part 1. The power of tropes in 280 characters.
Let's think about the difference here. Movies give us these long, extended narratives. They might stretch a concept across a 2-hour film, which allows for a lot of nuance and character development, but social media? It deals in short, implicit texts. An online trope compresses an entire worldview into a single, highly loaded sentence. And here is the real kicker. Online, the theme is almost never explicitly named. You are never going to read a post that says, "I am now going to use a narrative device to make you suspicious." Instead, the trope acts as this stealthy shortcut. It appeals to preconceived notions and shared cultural experiences to quietly persuade you, using a very small amount of space. So to figure out how this actually works, researchers meticulously analyzed thousands of texts. They specifically focused on discussions around vaccines and immigration. And from all that data, they identified 9 specific tropes used to shape public opinion. We've got natural's better, liberty, freedom, and hidden motives. Then there's scapegoat, defend the weak, and wicked fairness. And rounding out the whole list, we have skepticism towards authority, time proves me right, and too fast. These 9 categories literally form the foundation of the hidden language of the internet. Let's look at a clear example from the dataset. Not sure I will get the vaccine. Natural immunity is the best immunity. This perfectly captures the natural is better trope. It uses a highly relatable historical concept to make a modern medical claim. And the researchers point out that this is absolutely not a new phenomenon. Actually, back in the 1800s, people argued that natural methods were superior to the earliest smallpox vaccines. So by invoking this idea that nature knows best, the author of a short post completely bypasses complex medical data and appeals directly to a deep-seated human comfort with the natural world. And then there's this one. People were stripped of their rights, jobs, freedom, and forced against their will. You can clearly see the liberty-freedom trope in action here. It effectively shifts the focus completely away from public health and frames the issue strictly around personal autonomy. The researchers found this specific trope was incredibly prevalent, making up over 10% of the instances in their dataset. By leaning on heavy words like rights, freedom, and forced, the text instantly triggers a strong emotional response. It's an incredibly powerful storytelling device packed right into a single sentence.
Moving on to Part 2, the AI investigator.
Now, manually hunting down these tropes is, frankly, an absolute nightmare of a task. It's incredibly time-consuming. So researchers pitted massive commercial language models against specialized, fine-tuned models to see who made the better trope detective. On one side, you have giants like ChatGPT with a staggering 175 billion parameters using a zero-shot approach. which basically means it was just handed the definitions of the tropes and asked to find them, with no prior specific training on this exact dataset. On the other side, you have much smaller, fine-tuned models like BERT-FT and COVID-BERT-FT, which were specifically trained on 80% of the researchers' manually labeled data. Okay, so here is the absolute crucial number you need to know: 0.65. COVID-BERT-FT achieved a leading weighted F1 score of 0.65. Now, if you're not a data scientist, an F1 score is just a metric that balances a model's precision and recall to measure its accuracy. Hitting 0.65 proves that highly specialized, fine-tuned models actually outperform massive general AI for this highly specific task. Why? Well, because COVID-BERT was pre-trained on COVID-related tweets. That gave it a deep, structural understanding of the specific language and context used in the very debates the researchers were looking at. The giant models, while super impressive, just produced way too many false positives and couldn't match that nuanced context detection.
But as you might guess, the AI showed us that not all tropes are created equal. Tropes with clear keywords are pretty easy to spot. For instance, liberty, freedom constantly uses very obvious phrases like my body, my choice, or vaccine mandates. But the tropes that rely on vague future predictions, they lack obvious patterns, making them an absolute nightmare for algorithms to catch. The time proves me right trope is a great example. A user might just type, wait till you see what happens. There's no specific set of keywords there. It relies entirely on the implicit context of the conversation, and that is incredibly difficult for a machine to decode.
Part 3. Mapping the matrix.
When you mathematically map out how these narrative tropes interact in vaccine-related posts using a Pearson correlation matrix, something fascinating emerges. If you picture a grid, there is a bright diagonal line, which just represents each trope correlating with itself. But the vast majority of the data shows near zero correlation between different tropes. This tells researchers something totally vital. People generally do not mix these tropes in a single short text. If a post is leaning heavily on liberty freedom, it is probably not also trying to argue natural is better. They are deployed as standalone, highly focused narrative strikes.
And this is a real game changer. The data reveals that tropes operate completely independently from both conspiracy theories and traditional persuasion techniques. They are a totally unique dimension of language. The researchers actually ran their trope-detecting AI on external datasets that contained known conspiracy theories and persuasion memes. The results? A text can use a trope without promoting a conspiracy at all, and a conspiracy text might not use a single trope. They're entirely separate tools in the toolkit of online communication. Understanding these tropes gives us a brand new lens to analyze exactly how information and misinformation spreads like wildfire.
And that brings us to part 4, future risks and ethics.
Look, building an AI that can actually read between the lines of human communication comes with some massive responsibilities. The researchers are quick to point out that while this AI can monitor public discourse, there are very real risks. Malicious actors could easily adapt to evade detection. If propagandists figure out an AI is looking for the hidden motives trope, they'll just invent new, subtler ways to imply it. Plus, there is the risk of amplifying biased training data. If a model is only trained on specific sociopolitical contexts, like English language Twitter debates, it might completely misinterpret or unfairly flag the standard cultural communication styles of other demographics. It just means these models require continuous, rigorous auditing to actually stay fair and useful.
So, to wrap up our explainer, I want to leave you with this final question to chew on. Now that you know the tropes, how will you read your feed tomorrow? The next time you're scrolling through social media and you feel your emotions being tugged by just one simple sentence, take a step back. Ask yourself, are you reacting to the facts, or are you being steered by a carefully deployed storytelling shortcut? Recognizing the hidden motives, the appeals to liberty, or the scapegoats in your daily feed is literally the first step to reclaiming your own narrative. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the hidden language of the internet. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will see you in the next explainer.